Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you sent us, filter out the noise, and really get to the core insights. Today, we're tackling a comparison that sounds, well, frankly, a little dramatic at first. We're looking at the neuroscience of romantic heartbreak and comparing it to. And you'll want to brace yourself for this substance withdrawal.
Yeah, opioids, alcohol stimulants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking. One is this profound emotional, social loss. The other is a severe physiological dependence on a chemical. They seem worlds apart.
They do.
But the sources we've looked at, from neurobiology to psychology, they all suggest something pretty shocking. When you actually look under the hood at the brain's wiring.
There's a massive overlap, a really profound neurobiological overlap.
So that's our mission today. We want to uncover that shared circuitry. We want to understand why a broken heart doesn't just feel sad, but it feels physically, chemically agonizing.
Like an addiction being ripped away. And we can confirm that right at the top. The bottom line from all this research is that the brain systems we use for deep, intense, romantic attachment, they are shockingly similar to the circuitry that runs full-blown chemical addiction and, of course, the withdrawal that follows.
So the brain has one big motivational system.
It's a powerful system, and it really doesn't seem to care if the stimulus is a person or a pill.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start with how we even define withdrawal when we're talking about losing a partner. When we say romantic breakup withdrawal, we mean that acute distress that's caused by this sudden loss of a really powerful reinforcing stimulus.
The person.
The person, exactly. And you know the symptoms. We're talking emotional pain, sadness, sure, but it's more than that. It's this intense, relentless craving.
Rumination.
Yes. Those thoughts about them, you just cannot turn off. And then your sleep gets disrupted, your appetite disappears. It's a complete systemic meltdown, all driven by absence.
It is, and that's why researchers now frame intense romantic love using the same playbook as addiction. It really mirrors the cycle.
How so?
Well, you have the euphoria, the high in the beginning. Then comes the intense seeking, the dependence. You need more and more contact, which is basically tolerance.
Right.
And then when it ends, you get the crash, the withdrawal, and often that painful urge to relapse, to call them, to reconnect. The framework just fits.
Okay, so let's contrast that with substance withdrawal. Here, the physical side is so much more obvious, often medically dangerous.
Absolutely.
The symptoms vary a lot by the drug, of course, but they're all about the brain and body trying to rebalance after being flooded with chemicals. With opioids, for instance, we're talking about just extreme physical misery. Profuse sweating, muscle aches, nausea.
Like a deep, deep dysphoria. Plus that craving, it's relentless.
And with alcohol, the danger just skyrockets. The nervous system goes into hyperactivity. You can get dangerous tremors, severe anxiety, and in the worst case...
seizures, delirium tremens, it can be life-threatening.
And then there are stimulants, like cocaine. The withdrawal there isn't as physically volatile, maybe, but it's a brutal mental crash.
It's an emotional freefall. You get intense depression, fatigue, irritability, and again, that craving. But it's coupled with something called anhedonia.
The inability to feel pleasure from anything.
Anything at all. So what unites all of these is that the brain adapted to a new normal, a chemical normal. And withdrawal is the agonizing price of that normal just vanishing overnight.
So on the surface, we see craving, anxiety, dysphoria in both. But our mission was the plumbing. What's the shared circuit? If you could look inside the brain, what's lighting up in both cases?
This is where it gets really compelling. It all boils down to the brain's reward system, the primal reward system.
Okay.
It's an ancient system built for survival, and it really centers on what's called the mesolimbic dopamine pathway.
That's technical.
It is, but think of it this way. You've got the ventral tegmental area, the VTA, that's the brain's dopamine factory. And then you have the nucleus accumbens, which is like the pleasure switch that dopamine flips.
So the VTA makes the dopamine, the nucleus accumbens receives it.
Exactly. And its job is to signal pleasure, yes, but more importantly, to signal motivation, to flag how important it is to go get that reward again.
So are you telling me that if you put someone who's passionately in love into an fMRI scanner, their VTA and nucleus accumbens light up the same way they would if they were, say, craving a drug?
That is the startling conclusion from the research. The activation patterns are strikingly similar.
Wow.
Because to the brain, Both represent a highly important, highly motivated drive toward a massive reward. And that intensity is why the crash is so brutal when the stimulus is gone.
Whether it's the partner or the drug.
Doesn't matter.
That makes so much sense. The circuits learn to expect this constant hit of dopamine, and when it's suddenly gone, you get this huge chemical deficit.
A crash, an instantaneous crash. And that's where the dysphoria, the negative mood, the craving, that's where it comes from.
But you said dopamine isn't the whole story.
No, it's not. The stress response is just as important for that feeling of pure anguish.
Okay.
There's a chemical called corticotropin releasing factor, or CRF.
CRF?
When CRF spikes, you feel acute panic, your heart pounds, you can't calm down. It's the neurochemical signal for distress. And it's activated by social separation and by drug withdrawal.
It's the brain's alarm bell for loss.
A very loud one. Then you also have the attachment hormones to consider, like oxytocin and vasopressin.
Right, the cuddle hormones.
Exactly. And while they aren't the primary driver of addiction, the fact that they're so involved in social bonding just shows that this whole motivational system is designed to handle attachment, seeking, and the deep fear of separation.
So the same basic machinery is running the show no matter the input.
Whether it's natural and social or artificial and hijacked. Yes.
This similarity is really persuasive, but we have to get into the details.
Yeah.
The nuance.
Yeah.
Because nobody is saying Heartbreak is medically identical to detox.
Not at all. That's a critical distinction.
Okay, so let's compare. Opioid withdrawal versus breakup distress. Where's the similarity?
It's rooted in that shared feeling of dysphoria. There's growing evidence that social rewards, a hug, looking at a loved one, they actually activate the brain's own natural or endogenous opioid system.
Our internal painkiller system.
Precisely. So when you lose the partner, you get a drop in those natural opioid signals. It creates a feeling that's chemically similar to the start of opioid withdrawal. It's a drop in comfort and a spike in pain.
But the crucial difference, and we have to be really clear about this, is the physical risk.
Absolutely. Opioid withdrawal brings on severe autonomic symptoms. We're talking heart rate, sweating, vomiting, diarrhea, systemic distress.
And Heartbreak doesn't do that.
No. The distress is devastating, but it's centered in the brain's motivation and stress centers, not the autonomic systems that control basic body functions. There isn't that same medical risk.
Okay, let's move to alcohol. Alcohol withdrawal is famous for sending stress circuits into total overdrive.
Massive hyperactivity. And that's the connection point to Heartbreak. Breakup distress also fires up those stress systems intensely. We see elevated cortisol, the stress hormone.
Which makes you feel anxious and on edge.
And it reduces your ability to feel rewarded by anything else. You could almost see it as the brain's desperate attempt to motivate you to go find that lost person. A sort of biological panic.
But again, the difference in danger is stark. No risk of seizures from a breakup.
None. The autonomic instability just isn't there.
Which brings us to stimulants, cocaine, amphetamines. This comparison feels the most direct because it's all about dopamine.
It is. Stimulants just force the system to dump huge amounts of dopamine. So when they're removed, the system goes into an absolute free fall.
Due to what you call receptor downregulation.
And a big drop in dopaminergic tone.
Okay, hold on. Dopaminergic tone is a bit academic. For the listener, what does that actually feel like?
That's a great question. Think of it like the brain's internal volume control for pleasure and motivation. Stimulants crank that volume to 11. During withdrawal, the brain physically turns its own volume knob down to 0, maybe even into the negative. Everything feels flat, dull, uninteresting. That's the crash.
And that dopamine deficit, that anhedonia, it sounds incredibly similar to the emotional crash after a breakup, that feeling that nothing else matters.
It is perhaps the most potent shared symptom. The brain is basically screaming that the only thing that matters is getting that one specific reward back. Food is bland, music is noise.
Everything loses its color.
Exactly. The key distinction is the foundation. Stimulant withdrawal comes from physical neurological changes, tolerance, damaged receptors from the drug itself. Heartbreak is rooted in the absence of an external reward. It causes a chemical deficit for sure, but it doesn't cause that same kind of physical dependency profile.
So we've established the brain's machinery is shared. It's designed to drive this powerful seeking behavior. So why? Why would evolution set us up for this kind of misery?
Well, from an evolutionary perspective, it makes perfect sense. Evolution had to build a reward system that would powerfully reinforce behaviors essential for survival.
Finding food, finding mates.
Forming social bonds. These things had to be life or death motivating for us to survive as a species. The system had to be intense.
And drugs
But
just...
there's just hijack it. They provide a chemical shortcut, an artificial way to press that same pleasure switch, but with a much bigger hammer.
And this brings us to a concept you mentioned, allostasis. It's not just about stability. It's about the brain creating a new normal.
A new baseline, exactly. Based on the constant presence of that reward, whether it's a person or a substance.
So when that reward is suddenly gone, the brain experiences a huge deficit compared to that adapted baseline.
That's right. It doesn't just go back to its old normal. It enters a state of what we call allostatic load.
Which, to simplify, is like the brain constantly running on fumes.
That's a great way to put it. It's the intense, stressful effort the brain has to exert just to find stability again.
And that effort is what we feel as withdrawal.
That effort produces the negative mood, the high stress, the urgent craving to just make the chemical pain stop. That is the feeling of withdrawal.
Okay, so to summarize the neurobiology for everyone listening.
Breakup distress and substance withdrawal, they share deep roots in the brain's reward and stress systems. They're governed by the same key chemicals, like dopamine and CRF. The same machinery is signaling what's important.
But, and this is so important, we have to end by hammering home those crucial distinctions. We don't want anyone walking away thinking a breakup is literally the same as a drug addiction.
Critically important caveat, yes.
First and foremost, physiological risk. Opioid and alcohol withdrawal can be fatal. They require medical supervision. Breakup distress, however devastating, does not carry that acute medical danger.
Second, the diagnostic status. Romantic love is not a clinical disorder. Researchers use the addiction framework as a tool to understand the mechanism, but it is not a diagnosis.
And finally, the functional role.
Completely different. Romantic attachment is prosocial. It's foundational to society, to reproduction. Drug use tends to disrupt and destroy those very systems.
The engines might be the same, but the destinations are opposite.
Diametrically opposed.
So the core takeaway here is really powerful. While the physical side and the severity are very different, the same motivational pathways in your brain govern both your strongest social bonds and your response to artificial drugs.
That intensity you feel during heartbreak, that craving, that sadness, is in a very real chemical way your brain trying to reset a powerful expectation it learned to live with.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over.
If the brain uses the exact same machinery, the same dopamine pathways, the same stress hormones to push us toward a loving partner and toward a drug, what does that imply about the intensity of any motivated behavior the brain decides is necessary for survival or even just for pleasure?
It makes you wonder.
It really makes you ask, how dependent is our brain on just maintaining a stable chemical environment no matter what created that environment in the first place?
A profound new way to think about craving and dependence in all their forms. Thank you for diving deep with us.